Hey guys, this is Chris, and this is going to be a set of shows about KiCad, which just wrapped up here in Chicago, April 26th and 27th of 2019. This is the first one ever, and I am super appreciative to everyone who showed up, gave a talk, volunteered, everyone who was involved. I was really, really lucky. Sponsored as well, so I feel really grateful for everyone there. I wanted to try and get a capture of, some voices that were going to be at the show, why people are using the software, but really what are people doing, what are people building? And so you're going to hear people that are some familiar voices, some new voices. Something I tweeted about a couple days ago as well is that this is a show about KiCad, right? That was the point of this show. However, there was other things that were going on there. We were talking about manufacturing. We were talking about revision control. That we were talking about RF design. There's a lot of other stuff, but we did it in the context of talking about KiCad, which is the open source software that I've promoted for a couple years now. So in that vein, I would recommend you give it a shot. Now, I will say this first show is going to be with the developers, so it's a little bit of a heavy dose of KiCad stuff. So you might want to skip this one, maybe not. But I'm going to do the same thing that I did for Tour Camp. We're going to actually number the shows. So this is show 440. It's going to be 440.1.2.3. And then if you want to, you can just skip all of them. Or I do recommend you give it a shot and you listen. This first one is with a bunch of the lead developers. I've been wanting to talk to them for a long time, and I'm really grateful. A lot of them showed up as well, and I think they actually started to discuss some of the new features while we were there as well. Always love feedback. You can send feedback at theamphour.com, or you can leave a comment on the show page. We always love that as well. The schedule of release will be a little bit slower than Tour Camp. That was insane, but we're going to try and get these shows out. Also, the videos from all of the talks are coming out as well. So hope you enjoy it. Here's some shows from KiCad 2019. Thanks for listening, as always, and hope to see you at the next event. This is the Amp Hour Podcast, released April 28th, 2019. Episode 440.1. An interview with the KiCad developers. All right, so we're back at KiCad 2019. Who is here with me?
Wayne Stambaugh. If you don't know who I am, I'm the project leader of KiCad.
And it's Maciej Szymiński, widely known as Orson, one of the lead developers.
And Tom Włostowski, also one of the lead KiCad developers.
Nice. I feel like whenever Orson says that, I'm like, it sounds like he's on the lam. He's like running away from the law. He's like widely known as Orson. You may also know me from my past exploits.
My alias.
Yeah, right.
Also known as.
Yeah. So what do you guys think so far? How's it going for you?
Oh, this is fantastic. I have to say I like this better than I better not. Maybe I shouldn't say this publicly. I'm enjoying this more than FOSDEM.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Goes amazingly well. I didn't see any problems. Usually you have some things that don't go very well, but so far all good.
Okay, all right. I think even FOSDEM, you got to buy your own food. That's the worst part about FOSDEM.
Yes,
I like FOSDEM a lot. I really did.
Yeah, so. I do like it a lot too.
Yeah.
But this is really for the very first year. It's impressive. It's been really impressive.
Great.
Yeah, both in terms of technical content, in terms of all the amazing people who came here, the projects I saw yesterday. The parties, and last but not least, delicious food during that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about KiCad development. What does it look like? I mean, so people listening to Amp Hour, they use various programs. Maybe not KiCad, maybe they use other stuff as well. But what does it look like on the software side when you're developing for the hardware space? Like, what do you care about? What do you think about when you're working on the next feature, maybe?
Well, I know from my perspective is, everybody on the team, virtually everybody on the team does electronics design.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us have been at it for a long time, so we have an idea in our heads what we want in out of a product that we would use, and so that kind of drives the high level view of how KiCad's developed. Obviously, everybody has their own individual things they like to work on as well.
Sure.
But the goal is to try to push KiCad, further and further, into the space of,
awesomeness.
Yeah. Well, let's just say we'd like to get to where some of the proprietary tools are. In some respects, we're already equivalent.
Yeah.
We still have some features that are missing, so those we're trying to fill in those gaps, and we basically prioritize them based on what we think our user base wants, and what we've had. There's some request. We have a good idea. People, there's people pretty vocal about
sure.
about requesting.
People on the
things.
internet seem to let you know what that's on their mind.
Nobody holds back their feelings.
Right,
so.
right.
Yeah, for me, it's mostly talking to people, see what do they need to work with KiCad more efficiently, and there are also my needs, because I also use KiCad, and from time to time I just see that if there was that one little thing,
exactly.
it would be so much easier.
There goes my weekend.
Yeah, and then you stop your work, because I mostly work on my hobby projects, so I have time to make a pause and try to improve that particular bit.
Yeah, because you're not like driving towards that deadline on the hardware
Yeah,
side.
fortunately.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, well, so you guys are both at CERN, Orson and Tom. How does that impact things? I mean, are you using it for your work at CERN, or how many people are?
Well, the vast majority of projects done at CERN are still done using proprietary software. I'm talking about the PCB projects.
Sure.
But we, during the past couple of years, we had a bunch of pilot projects for KiCad. Done exclusively in KiCad. The goal was first of all to get feedback from the so-called drawing office. There is a special design bureau within CERN with people doing PCB layouts 8 hours a day.
Yep.
They are professionals, so their feedback was extremely important for us.
Yeah, that's great though.
Because for them the let's say efficiency of the layout app is something extremely important.
Right, it's multiplying over time, right?
Exactly.
If something takes someone an hour longer and they're
Exactly.
doing 100 boards a year, that can really, really add up.
So we designed a bunch of PCBs with them. These were relatively simple PCBs, 4 or 6 layers, some small FPGA plus some IOs. And they were pretty happy. They came up with a huge list of improvements. What surprised me is that, for instance, things that are requested by many people on the forums were not on the list of the professionals.
Sure.
Yep.
Nobody asked for dragging footprints with traces connected, for instance.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's another interesting thing that I see is like, so I've done a little bit of like product work in the past, where it is like, it's interesting because with KiCad there's no paying customers, so there's no like we have to do this, right? It's more like what is the loudest, squeakiest wheel? Sometimes gets it right. Sometimes it's this is the most interesting thing, or this is the most modern thing, or this will move the thing forward. And so watching like professionals doing it and watching like other people doing it, it's like that's a interesting way to modify what might be on the roadmap.
Well, and on Tom's, adding to what Tom was saying about that, the report that CERN put together about the usability, I think that's telling, and it's one of the reasons that I don't want to, as the project leader, I don't want to push people off as far as the hobbyist goes. We don't want to lose those. I want to keep those people happy in some respects, but the really the final goal of KiCad has always been professional users, because like I said, that's what I am.
Sure.
Well, up until a couple of days ago. Now,
hey,
now I'm
man,
the lead.
Now
I'm the
you're
lead
living the easy life of a software developer.
Yeah, that's it. But no, seriously. So that's always been my approach, is to try to balance keeping KiCad moving towards the realm of professional board layout and still maintain it, keep it as usable as possible. So, so we've always tried to balance the needs of that, both user groups, and it's not always easy. But we've had to tell people, like people trying to run KiCad on small form factor devices, that's
Raspberry
not
Pi is probably not the right.
Yeah, it's not a goal,
right.
So, but you're willing.
Sure, you got to draw a line somewhere, right?
But we're always willing. If somebody submitted a patch that said, "Hey, look, I got this like minimal patch that makes it work," okay.
Yep.
But that's not going to be the goal of the main. Like, I wouldn't ask any of my main developers to work on any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not where I see KiCad going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In the long run.
So if we can come back to the selection of features question, let's say my driving force when I decide what to do with for KiCad is my experience with doing layouts in proprietary tools at work.
Sure. Yeah.
I've done many of them, some of them rather complex. Basically, I want KiCad to have the same things, or even better,
Sure, yeah.
than the proprietary software I used for complex layouts.
Someone actually brought that up. They said, is there ever a way to get people together and talk about the things they do and don't like about different, like the Altium and the Cadence users of the world and the Zukins of the world, like actually have them sit in a room and be like, who has this? Yeah, I have this. I want that. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like a cross section of what's out there. And back to your thing about the professional. I think only when you say professional is unusable is when it's bad, right?
Right.
Professional is like get a job done quickly
No.
versus
what I mean professional is feature set, not
Sure,
usability.
Right.
Let's not confuse that. Those are
Right.
two different issues. Because I've seen lots of features in high-end CAD tools that are good features, but they're just miserable to use. Like one of the things we would do is, and just from my experience over the years using different proprietary tools is, like there's plenty of good things about them. I'm not knocking them, but there's always those things that I was like, well, I don't like that. And if I was doing my own,
right, someday,
this is how I would do it. Because it just, it's not that the tool didn't work or get the job done. It did. I just didn't think it was very usable.
Yep.
So when I do say for professional users, I mean in terms of feature sets that a professional user needs to get their job done.
Yep.
Now, what we do is and we have a lot of people with experience in all kinds of different tools, so we all know how to pick out the things that we like about those tools and the things we want. Nope, that's not. We're never going to do it that way.
Right.
So I think we can do a pretty good job of implementing features in a manner that people can use, that people find usable.
Yeah, that's good. So my focus is mostly on it from the beginner side. I'm trying to get people into that system, and I think even still a lot of people. I think CAD in general is a jarring experience. It's a tough thing, especially just because you're looking at a schematic and you're like, what does this even mean? This isn't real, So and trying to get someone to change their brain around a little bit for this old school method of, and obviously we've seen a lot of the tools that are more software focused too. I think a lot of the software methodologies are coming in are really powerful as well. So, what about how do people get? I guess we've had some talks. We'll be posting the talks. But how do you see people getting involved? So, like Orson, how do you work with people that are new to the project that might be listening? Or like, oh, maybe I'll consider it.
Right. I think you mean new to the project, like developers or the users? Developers. Yeah. So I think they mostly ask questions on the mailing list. I think that's the right approach. We have some documentation for the developers, some guidelines. And I think that's the first step.
Okay.
We have some documentation. I think that's the good way to start. John Evans gave a really good talk. If you want to become a developer, I really recommend checking that talk. And
that was good.
Yeah, basically it's just email exchange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, what else do you see in the future? So Wayne, you have the roadmap you went over yesterday. What else are you guys excited about? I guess that's kind of what's the future of CAD, even if not just for KiCad?
Well, there's a lot of places to go with that. I think in the near term future, obviously, is we've got a pretty deep feature set in version 6. There's a few other things in there that we want to get done for our users things have been requested. So I think that'll happen in V6. Looking outward, there's maybe some big usability things that we can improve in KiCad. We sat down with there's a group that does UI design we've been working with. They interviewed all the lead developer team individually, and then they put together a report for us, and they gave us some big hit things to look at. Yeah, that's just happened within the last month. So we're starting to put that into play now. We're talking about making our UI stuff a little bit more consistent. It's one of the drawbacks of an open source development is, you got 10 different guys, just dialog boxes is the perfect example.
Yep.
Everybody has their own, their own design philosophy. And we really need to try to, I think we actually have somebody now where we can unify that. Yeah. And so if we have one guy designing that, just consistency, things like that. So there's that part of it, which is really nice going forward, so we start to get that thing moving forward. And now with me, one of the other things that's nice is a lot of contributions that get dropped or get pushed off for long periods of time will be able to be addressed now that I can work full time on
Right.
KiCad.
Well,
So
we
yeah,
should
that's
say as well, if people don't know that you just announced that you're working on it full time.
Yeah,
as
for
a part
those
the
of you who haven't
sponsorship.
heard, I was hired by WIT to work full time on KiCad, so I am now officially a full time developer / project leader.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that's interesting too, is that like me as an end user, like I have to kind of like step back and be like, oh, this is like a product that's free and open source, but yeah, there's still people working on it. You know, like that's still like you need to have structures around like the, you know, even the small stuff like not small stuff like translations, right? That's a big part of the community contribution as well, and getting just things that a software team would need to get out the door, like testing and all the stuff. Like you guys have to have structures for that, and it's
Yep.
really impressive that you're able to do that.
Well, I hate the word developers. Probably some people, when they hear developer, they just think of the guys that write software. So you think of the lead development team, but that's really not fair, because I consider everybody. I mean, we got people that do packaging.
Sure.
We got
Yeah.
people that do translations. The librarians do a fantastic job.
Librarians have been doing some great stuff lately.
We got people who write documentation. We got the guys who do all the package and the CI builds, and all the people, and just users. I mean, the number of users that run the nightly builds really helps us.
Yeah.
They really help us with testing. So it's really, I mean, when you say developer, you just think, I know it's easy to just say, oh yeah, it's the lead development team, but it's a lot more people than that. So it's a really wide group of people.
It's a village. It takes a village.
It really, it takes a
Yeah.
large number of people. It's way beyond just the immediate lead development team.
Right, and that's I think one thing that was mentioned. I think Adam brought that up during the developer panel too. He said, helping out on the packaging. That's another thing where it's like that kind of usability out of the box kind of experience really helps from people coming into the project as well.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks for talking to me. I mean, thanks for showing up too. You guys all flew in.
Oh,
and-
absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
sorry.
our pleasure.
It's snowing, so sorry about that. I can't control Chicago's
Why
weather.
sorry?
You guys like it? Okay.
Well, they live in Switzerland.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, but it's April 27th, so that's sorry.
I haven't finished my skiing season
Oh.
yet.
Well, good. Yeah, good luck finding a Chicago ski hill. Okay, we're back at KiCad 2019, and who do we have here?
I'm John Evans. I'm part of the KiCad lead development team. I've been a part of it for about 2 years now.
I'm Seth Hilbrand. I am going to duplicate the second half of John's statement.
Yeah, that's great. Well, glad to talk to more developers here. I just finished up recording with Tom and Orson and Wayne, and want to talk to you guys as well. First off, you both did fantastic talks. I really, really liked them. Could you explain what
Thanks.
you were talking about real quick?
Sure. So my talk was sort of self-interested in getting more people to help me with my work developing KiCad. So I basically gave as much of an overview as I could in a short time of the KiCad development process, and tried to point out where people would go if they wanted to learn about getting involved. Whether they want to actually contribute code or whether they just want to know a little bit more about the internal workings and how to build from source, just so that they can help test things faster.
That's great. That's great. And Seth, you gave 2 talks, so.
Yeah, I did. I was the one that if anyone's listening and wanted to go to one of the talks, I'd really like people to give a listen to and think about the inclusion talk and how we as a community can build and develop larger segments of the user base in a positive fashion. And one of the things that open source is notorious in a bad way.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Is
There's like a badge of honor when like Linus curses people out, I think, but it's not a good look on the outside though, right?
It's not a good look, but if you are coming into a new community,
Right.
it sets up a barrier to entry that doesn't need to be there,
Right.
and that the sort of toxicity you can either overcome it, by kind of sheer force of money, or you implode, and if you allow it to continue. And I don't want that to be KiCad's fate, and I don't think that anyone here does either, and frankly anyone in our community. And so developing our own kind of internal mental tool sets for how we interact with each other when we disagree, when we have discussions about future plans, can not only improve the tools that we use, but can improve how we feel about our community as a larger group. So it's a non-technical talk. It's very much focused on the sociological aspects of community building, and I hope people would offer some feedback on ways that I can improve that if they have a chance.
Sure. Well, the thing I liked about it was that, so I referred to both your talks recently too, because it was like you're talking about bringing people in, you're talking about welcoming people in, and but also like I'm really like I consistently surprised. I'm like, oh wait, but like most of the people that are working on the software side of things like are doing the hardware as well, and like that's an interesting like viewpoint. Is like you're actually using the software on a daily basis. You are the users, you are the testers, you are the
it's not
the
always
writers.
the case with a lot of the software.
Right. So that's really helpful. I mean, how do you find that experience of being able to turn around and be like, I want a feature. Oh, okay, I'll try to.
I think that was the main motivation for me getting involved in the first place. I think I've had the opportunity to use a large number of different ECAD tools, both open source and commercial, over the past decade or so, and I both want to be able to do more complicated things at home and do them faster and enjoy the workflow more. And I also want to be able to suggest KiCad as an open source tool and workflow that might be applicable to more people in the future. As I talk to people in my workplace or people who are at other electronics workplaces who say, would this be right for me? Is it powerful enough? No one wants to be paying thousands and thousands of dollars per seat for these tools. And in the past, there's been this perception that, well, the open source things are out there, but maybe they're not up to snuff. Maybe they don't have the features we need, or maybe the workflow is just too painful. It would add too much extra time to our day. And so I'm really motivated by trying to find ways that we can make that workflow applicable to more people over time. So it really motivates me. Not only, I think most of the things that I can do to help are not things that I would do at home for my own hobbyist projects, but rather they're things that I could see, a couple years down the line, if KiCad continues on the trajectory it's on right now of improvement. I could feel good coming into an office environment and saying, you know what, you should really consider this. It is what will solve your problems. Right.
Yeah. No. With great power comes great responsibility. So, I'm in the same boat with John. There were a couple itches that I looked at KiCad and was like, oh man, that should
almost
that should work better. And so I contributed a few features, and maybe a year and a half later, a user came up to me and it's like, man, KiCad would be great if only they hadn't added this one feature.
Oh no! Seriously?
Seriously.
Oh wow!
No, there's always
you'll always find that person though.
Well, so that's the thing. It's not that person, because it's the one. It is one person that I met, but I guarantee that they are not alone. That they are not alone. There are other people who are unhappy that junction dots are now mandatory. It's so this sort of which is just kind of a random example that came out of my head, but lots of people have these ideas for new features, and we as developers also have ideas for new features, but we have to moderate that impulse with an eye toward the future of KiCad and whether that feature interrupts other people's workflows or, even worse, interrupts their data in some fashion. Right. And this
like sea change level type things.
Well, and it can be small things too, right? That just change how the workflow in the program happens, that just stops one person, or stops this group of people from doing their normal work. And so we try to be conscientious about the effect that our changes will have on our user base before we put them in, because once they're in KiCad, we're supporting them for the foreseeable future. Yeah. Especially in the file format. So if we make a change in the file format, we have to be able to process that file format for the lifetime of KiCad. KiCad will open any file that KiCad ever generated for the history of KiCad, right? So So if there's a little feature that we're scratching, and the easy way to implement the feature is in the file format, and the harder way to implement the feature is to think about the larger structure, then we're going to hold off, and we're going to look at improving the overall structure so that we don't burden all of our users with this file format change that they will have for as long as they use KiCad. As long as they use KiCad.
What about the long-term stuff of? So someone referred to KiCad as like the GCC of hardware eventually, and I like that idea, but I'm not sure if it's relevant or a good comparison. Do you think that's a possible future, especially like if we start getting like industry buy-in?
Well, I think it depends on what exactly they were thinking of when they made the comparison to GCC. I mean, I think one step in that direction that we're starting to see, especially, my eyes have been open to it, just in the past few days, talking to and hearing the presentations from all of these people involved in the manufacturing workflow, is it's becoming more and more a real part of the tool chain from, design to finished product, and being used more and more for getting real things done. And I think in that sense, in some ways it's following the arc of GCC, especially if you look at, the embedded systems area where it used to be you had proprietary siloed compilers for every embedded architecture, or even different families within the same vendor. And now most of them are moving to GCC, and it's no longer the case that you have to, install a completely different tool chain all the time if you just want to switch from one microcontroller to another. So I think in that way, the momentum we're gathering is really going to help, because the fewer different, competing tools, and competing is a weird word because it's an open source project.
Like adjacent or
adjacent
tools.
Well,
it's competing for the developer's attention.
Exactly. The more development energy and user feedback energy and workflow energy goes into one set of tools, the faster it can move, and the better it's going to be able to solve more people's problems.
Peter here again. I reappeared suddenly.
Peter appears.
So I think to that GCC idea, not so long ago, you guys added support for this extended Gerber file support. I think, was KiCad the first software to implement it? Was that correct?
We're not the first, no.
But it was
one of the first,
basically requested from the Gerber standardization people to be added, right?
Well, so
at least that's how it sounded on the mailing list.
Yes. So the company that is responsible for standardizing the Gerber format has a close working relationship with some of the KiCad developers, and so I think that's the reason why it got implemented in KiCad so quickly. It wasn't like we were contracted to make that happen or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's clear. But this is what I think is also like the part of the GCC. It becomes like if it is not implemented in GCC or supported in GCC, it's a bad thing for that thing. And I think some sections of the industry, manufacturing industry, if they have a special format for a thing, and it is not part of KiCad eventually. I hope that will become a thing. It's like if they don't have it implemented in KiCad, they will not. It will not become a standard.
From your mouth to these manufacturers' ears, that'd be fantastic. I don't know what your timeline is there for manufacturers taking up KiCad as as even a footprint standard yet.
Right.
That's we need to cross the small hills first.
Right.
Of course, but another thing that it's like because I'm a weird small company that has a pick and place machine. I know that, for example, the interface to pick and place machines, this is a huge time sink on the setup side. If you have a really good system to generate all the weird, quirky position files for different pick and place machines through history, this will people will want to accept KiCad projects to their manufacturing, and will probably want to have it from KiCad if it supports the weird export files and have an interface to. So what I'm thinking here is, if a assembly house has a certain pick and place machine and certain workflow, and they need a certain format of a file, they can publish that script to generate that. Here, put that in KiCad, generate the right files for our machines, and it will save us hours of converting the files that whatever it exports.
It sounds like you're talking about a standardization, or a standard that is published and maintained by an independent organization that is maybe IPC adjacent.
Yeah.
I don't see KiCad getting into this.
What if we just called it like PeterCAD?
There we go.
Yeah.
But I think I
case,
sort of
right?
get what
Yeah.
you're saying, though. I mean, we kind of have the situation now where, like was mentioned in one of the talks, if you want to export a BOM in whatever format you want, you can use export plugin and
Similar
customize
to that, but for the POS files.
And I think this is already something that's technically possible. We just need to push it and make people aware of it, and find a few interested manufacturers who we can point out the Python APIs and help them solve their own problem.
Right, and they'll be like, what's Python?
Well,
honestly,
It is becoming a standard.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that all these things are like, it's always like I think it feels like the balance is standardization, where it's like, all right, everybody does this one thing, or flexibility, like we were talking about with the generators, and then you allow scripting and flexibility, and somewhere in between there.
Right.
So I don't think we're going to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room anytime soon, but maybe, I don't know.
Well, we can hope.
No, I mean, I asked you this earlier, but I'm sure other folks will want to know just how you got into KiCad development, and like how long you've been doing it, kind of thing.
Sure. So I've been working on the project for about 3 years now, and on the lead development team for about half of that. I got involved because I, first of all, been a KiCad user for long before that, and just spun occasional hobby boards just to have some fun. And in my employment, I've had the chance to evaluate a lot of different commercial tools, not only the ones that we use on the day-to-day basis, but also several times exploring should we switch tools. And then that involves looking at a bunch of different tools and comparing them. And so it was easy to, as I'm building these comparisons and making spreadsheets of features and spending time test driving these very expensive tools, to throw KiCad into the mix there and say, okay, how does it stack up? And I was pleasantly surprised in some ways to find that KiCad, even back, this was before 5.0, it was pretty close to a lot of tools in a lot of ways, and you really had to, if you were just thinking about functionality, you had to get out to sort of the cutting edge before it became a limitation. And obviously, the bigger issue was the workflow and the ability to adapt to everyone's needs, especially larger commercial outfits that would need a lot of collaboration and things like this. So I started thinking, okay, maybe this is something that I should do something about. I'd been looking for, yet another hobby, and so that's how it started. Was I had all of these lists of things that KiCad couldn't do and Tool X could do, and as it went on, I thought, okay, I can fix that, and started diving in and one by one knocking things off that to-do list.
Yeah, I suppose I started using KiCad as a user. Wow, well before 4.0.
BZR days.
The BZR days, the the dark ages, as we this, and I use KiCad predominantly to design boards for academic research, and these they have requirements that are a curious mix of very unique and periodically we'll get something in that needs to be cutting edge, and in terms of, say, frequencies we handle, see other talk, but these are interspersed with small single layer boards that just need to light up an LED. So when I was looking around, when I started my current job, I had initially inherited a PADS license, which reminded me unpleasantly of my previous years working with Zuken CADStar, which I did not enjoy, and so I broke out KiCad to start recreating a lot of the techniques that were implemented in the legacy boards in the PADS license that I was using at the time, and where KiCad was unable to accomplish something that the PADS was able to do, I poked around at the code and thought I saw a few paths forward for correcting a number of those deficiencies, and the development team was receptive to the fixes. Most of it was bug fixes in the beginning, and receptive also to the some of the ideas for workflow improvements. And it's that level of openness that I felt really distinguished KiCad from a number of other open source projects, shall remain nameless, that have very, very hard requirements on what they want to see from new contributors before they're willing to accept even the smallest patches. And so Orson, Tom, and Wayne and JP all were very and Alexis also, I shouldn't forget her, were very supportive in helping me wrap my brain around all of the quirks in KiCad. And honestly, without their patience and help, I don't think I would have progressed very far in the code base. So it's to their great credit that they have been so willing to bring new people in to the project.
I'll echo that. As I got started, I didn't have a history of contribution to established open source projects before that, and so I didn't really have any expectations one way or the other. But the team and the interactions I had with them were all positive and pushed me in the right direction, and it never felt like there was friction related to interacting with the rest of the team. So that felt really nice, and I'm glad that we are actively recognizing that and trying to make sure it continues.
Yeah, from the perspective as a spectator of the developer mailing list, it's like I said that in person already before, but I actually enjoy reading the mailing list, and it's I can't tell that about many open source projects. And it's like the atmosphere is of wonder and and excitement. That's how I would describe it, and it's really wonderful to see like all these wonderful features like going down the pipeline and the people being excited about them without ending up in some bike shedding slap fights, which usually you see in other projects, and this is great.
And I'll be honest, if anyone listening is curious or is under the impression that just happens by accident, it is not by accident, and a lot of the I'll reiterate just small points. The Wayne deserves an enormous amount of credit for how he has shepherded not just the core developers, but the community as a whole through a few difficult interactions. And these happen everywhere, and there are conflict in every large organization, and his skill with mediating and cutting off discussion that is derailed, and when I say cutting off discussion, I don't mean shutting down disagreements just because they're disagreements, but when the discussion focuses on KiCad and how to improve KiCad, everyone's all in and working on the best way forward. And when the discussion deviates from that, then it gets reined in, and so people watching from the outside, largely in the mailing list, will see positive interaction because the other things get reined in very, very quickly. And that is nothing but beneficial to KiCad.
It's really awesome,
Yeah. Well, thank you both for talking to us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.